and welcome to AJ Paints. I'm Andy. In this video I'll be looking at Oblivion's Maw, an expansion from Maladum, a board game by Battle Systems. The main enemy in this new expansion is the Corruptor, a tentacled monstrosity that's come through from another dimension to cause your adventurers all kinds of issues. It's an intimidating adversary and an intimidating looking miniature to paint, but luckily the tentacles pop off and it's a lot easier than you think. With these separate miniatures, the tentacles on their bases, the whole thing becomes a little bit more manageable. We're going to have a look at a way of speed painting this using the smallest number of paints that I could figure out, and you can get a great finish in not too long. The whole thing took me a couple of hours. So this is the main body of the Corruptor, and you can see here we've got a mouth in the middle with some teeth. We've got some tentacled areas like squid underneath suckers, and just the outside, the top of the tentacles themselves. We've also got these bone spur sort of limb things ready to pull your adventurers in with a bit of webbing underneath them. Now the tentacles themselves, they're fairly similar. We've got some sort of strandy, muscly bits on the outside. We've got some spikes sticking out, little bone spikes sticking out of the outside there. There are some cracks in the skin. We've got this big wound, and all of the tentacles seem to have these little splits and wounds, and then the underneath of the sucker bits themselves. We've also got the bases, which are rocky in finish. The tentacles pop on and off these bases. You need to be careful when you do that. Some of these pegs, they're sturdy, but they feel like they might come off. I've seen some excellent examples of magnetising these. I might look at that in a future video. So I've started, as I always do, with black surface primer from Vallejo. I usually brush this on, just hand brush it on, but this time I used my airbrush because there were quite a few pieces. There was lots and lots of fiddly bits, and I was feeling lazy. I just wanted to save some time. Now, once I've done that, I'm going for an undercolour, which is whole red. I always use whole red when I'm going over with a green colour afterwards. It's a fantastic underneath colour starting point. So I'm using a dry brush for this, but I'm brushing the paint on reasonably thickly. It's more of a wet brush. I'm going to go all over these miniatures and make sure they've got a good coating, but I'll leave some of the deepest areas just black. Now I'm only putting the base coat on the bits that are going to be green or red. I'm leaving the bone areas, I'm leaving the teeth for the most part. I'm actually leaving the mouth in the middle, although that's going to be red as well. On the tentacles, I go over everything. Don't leave anything black except for the base. So for the next colour and the next area, I'm looking at all the fleshy bits, anything that's muscle or well, like the inside of the mouth here, the wounds on the tentacles, and I'm going for this wine red by AK Interactive. It's a really pinky red. You could use Screamer Pink from Games Workshop, would work well, or any pink red. If you haven't got one, just get a normal red and mix a little bit of white into it, and maybe a tiny bit of blue, and you'll be absolutely fine. Now you might notice that I'm being quite messy here. My brush isn't a fantastic high quality brush. You can see it's split and hooked at the end, but that's all intentional. I think although this is an intimidating looking miniature, like I said at the beginning, you can paint this where really as a starter. It can be one of your first miniatures even. You don't need to be too careful. You can see I'm not slopping the paint on, but I'm not being too worried about if I go over edges. If the colour bleeds in a little bit into the whole red, it's not a problem. And you'll notice the same when I'm painting the tentacles here. I'm picking out certain areas underneath the well, the end of the tentacle there. You can see I've got a little bit on the bone spur. It really doesn't matter. I'm not going to spend time cleaning it up. Going over on these strandy things and then painting on the outside. I'm also going to have a look and see if I can get some paint into some of the bigger cracks, the splits in the tentacle skin, just for a good effect later on. So just do exactly the same for all of the rest of the tentacles. Make sure you've got all those bits coloured in, and we're ready for the next stage, which is dry brushing. Pale sand is just one of those colours that I think you should have in your arsenal. It's so useful. I don't know what I'll do if I ever run out of it. I guess you could replace it with any other kind of ivory, but it just works so brilliantly. So I'm dry brushing here. I've got a cheap makeup brush that I use for all my dry brushing. I did buy some expensive ones at one point, but I've never got them out of the box. I always come back to these. They cost me about £2 or £3 on Amazon. They're brilliant. So I'm dry brushing, which means I'm getting a little bit of paint on the end of the brush. I'm tapping some of it off, the worst of it off, on a piece of paper towel that's just off camera there. And then I'm building up that colour. I'm building it up slowly. I don't want to slap the paint on. I want to make sure that I'm preserving the details, the scales and the bits of the cracks in the skin. I'm also focusing more on the top of the miniature, just so I can get some kind of a shading effect. And you can see there, it's a little bit darker underneath, but I want to build it up to be nice and light, so when I put my other colour, my green colour, over the top, it'll work really well. So you're going to do that for all the tentacles, and then the big boy, the main base. It's exactly the same. You just need to start working and building it up. And the beauty about the way I've devised this scheme, I suppose, is that you can use this colour, pale sand, for all of this. You're going to go over the tentacles, you're going to go over the undersides, you're going to go over the mouth, all the wounds, but also you don't need to do anything on the big bony arms or the teeth apart from this dry brushing. You can see here how absolutely rapidly you get a fantastic effect on there. It looks similar-ish to the box art. If you get a little bit of that webbing, the sort of disgusting skin stretched underneath the arms, done as well, that'll look good. Now at this point I think I've been brushing for, I don't know, about 20 minutes, half an hour. I built it up really slowly. You've got to be careful just to make sure that you get into all the places, and you don't leave big blobs of white, well, pale sand coloured paint. And you can see there's some bits around the back that I haven't got into yet. So at some point I'll flip my brush around and use the smaller end. Now once I'd done the base, I connected all the tentacles on because I've painted them separately, and I wanted to make sure that I blended them in. You can see here the tentacle on the left I'm about to start painting. It didn't blend in with the base very well. There was red on the tentacle and not on the base. So I'm going in a little bit heavier with the dry brushing just to try to join those two together. And there it is, it's done. Actually, I was really pleased with this. I thought you could probably leave that if you wanted that kind of pale, grotesque effect. You could put that on the table straight away as it is and call it done. But we're going to have a look at some more ways of getting colour on your miniature, make it look even better. So the best way to get colour quickly onto your miniature is to use contrast paints. If you've not used them before, you can see here they're very thin. I'm mixing two colours, Blood Angel's Red, super saturated red, and Guilliman Flesh, which is a brownish pink colour. On their own, they're very intense, so I'm getting water in there as well, probably about the same amount of water, so it's a third is the mix. And there's my beautiful palette, which I virtually never clean, but it's fine. So we're getting ready. I'm using the same dodgy brush that I was using before. It's not got a great tip on it. I thought it would be a good idea to show you that you don't need expensive stuff to get this done. And you don't need to be super careful. I keep saying this on this miniature, you really don't. It doesn't matter if this red bleeds a little bit onto the white around the outside, because when you put the green on, it'll just blend together. It'll look really good. You can see here with the paint thinned down, it really picks up all of the highlighting, that work we did with the dry brushing earlier, and those bits of skin and flesh look absolutely disgusting, which is what we want. So you can see here I've picked this tentacle in particular because it's got loads of little bits on it. The bit on the end here works really nicely. Just chuck that colour on and avoid those little bone spur bits as they're sticking out. So exactly the same for the base here. I found as I was painting this, I was just holding onto it with my hands at first. I put it on a stand after a while because I realised as I was painting these bits at the bottom that I'd get my thumbs all over them. So just be aware of that. The paint takes a little while to dry, and you don't want to be picking some of it up on your fingers and then spreading it around to areas where you don't want that paint. But same, you can see here even better that beautiful mix of Blood Angel's Red and Guilliman Flesh gives you a disgusting bleeding finish on all of those. Works beautifully in the mouth. In fact, later on in the mouth I put some just almost straight red in there to make it even more of a more, as it were. But I'm really pleased with this. Now I didn't check on the original painted miniature that's in the manual whether these bits were pink skin or black bone stuff, but I thought they looked really good as that sort of pink stretched out skin, and just building up the colour on here makes them look even better. So just the addition of that red flesh mix makes the thing look better already. You could leave it here, but we'll have a look at the next stage, almost the last stage actually, which is getting some skin colour. So this is Plague Bearer Flesh. I've used this before on a few miniatures from Battle Systems. That's about 1 to 4 water to Plague Bearer. It's a little bit intense on its own. The first one of these I painted just straight up Plague Bearer, and it looks a little bit too green, but this is great. It looks really snotty and horrible. It sort of seems a bit thin when you put it on first, but just trust it, it'll be fine. And you can see here, you can be really messy with this. I'm brushing right over onto the red pink mix, just onto that border, and it doesn't really matter because it's thin, it blends in, because of the nature of the paint, that sort of translucent nature, it works out really well. And the same on the base. Super satisfying to pick out these big chunky tentacles in between the red fleshy underneath bits, and then dodging around the teeth, a little bit tricky, but if you angle your brush right, you'll be fine. So I'm still using this same dodgy old brush with the split ends and everything else. I've had it for a while. Just a cheap synthetic brush. Again, you don't need expensive stuff for a paint finish like this. So that's most of that done. Just moving on to the bases now. I imagine these as having an earthy inside with the rubble of the flagstones sort of bursting out around. So I've based these with whole red from earlier, and I'm also using these on the stumps of the tentacles. I'm not sure what to do with them. I've seen some brilliant examples of people painting them so they look like they're shredded meat, and they've got magnets in them and everything else. So I'm lazy. I've just gone back to the whole red and then back to the wine red and just painting them on here, and so it'll look good when you've popped those tentacles off in the middle of a battle. Going back to the bases, I got this a while ago, this enamel Old Rust, and I tend to avoid using enamels because they stink and you have to use different solvents and whatever, but it works brilliantly. It's a liquid pigment, so it dries super matte, and as you put it on, you can see here it just bleeds down into the cracks. I'm not being careful here at all, just sort of tapping it on, and when it dries, looks amazing. You can see here it's got a really dirty dark brown, and it just looks like stone with the dirt sort of pushing through it. Anyway, there it is, the finished thing. The finish you get on it is way better than the time that you'd spend on it, I think. I'm really pleased with that. It's not quite the box art, but it looks pretty good. It looks good in the photos, it looks fantastic on the table. It's a great miniature. And here's the spinny, beautiful shot with my brand new exciting coloured lights to make it look good. Anyway, as always, if you've got this far, I thank you very much for watching. I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe. See if I can get more, up to 1,000. Maybe I'll be able to add chapters to these videos. Anyway, I'll see you again for the next one.